Okay, let's unpack this, because I think we're about to break my brain a little bit today,
In a good way, hopefully.
in the best way possible.
Yeah.
You know how usually when we want to understand something, anything, really our first move is to try to define it.
Right. That's the standard operating procedure for the human brain.
Exactly. We want the dictionary definition. We want the specs. We want to draw this neat little box around a concept so we can point to it and say, aha, I know what this is. I've got it.
It creates a sense of order. It makes the world feel navigable.
But today, we're looking at a source that argues that when it comes to the biggest concepts, specifically God or the divine, that instinct to define isn't just helpful, it's actually destructive. This text argues that the moment you claim to know exactly what God is, you have in fact stopped talking about God entirely.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? We're diving into a text called The Protective Silence of Negative Theology.
I know.
And I know negative theology sounds incredibly dry, maybe a little depressing, like we're just going to talk about how nothing matters.
That was my first thought. I saw the title and I was like, oh great, a deep dive into pessimism.
Right.
But the implications here are actually so personal and, honestly, a bit radical.
Radical is definitely the right word, because this source suggests that definition is dangerous.
And here is where it gets really interesting for me. This is the specific angle I really want us to wrestle with. If defining God turns the divine into this fake object, an idol, does that mean that people who reject those definitions, like, say, atheists, might be, without even knowing it, doing something deeply spiritual?
That is the big question. It just flips the usual script completely on its head.
How so?
Well, we usually think of spirituality as having a full backpack of beliefs and atheism as having an empty one.
Right.
But this source suggests that the act of emptying the backpack might be closer to ancient wisdom than we realize.
Okay, so let's get into it. The source starts with this warning. Ancient theology learned early that definition is dangerous. Now I have to play the skeptic here right away.
Please do.
Why dangerous? Definitions are usually safe. If I define a tiger, it helps me know not to pet it. If I define poison, it keeps me alive. So why is defining God dangerous?
In the realm of finite things, tigers, poison, chairs, you are absolutely right. Definitions are survival tools.
Okay.
But the source argues that God, by its very nature, is infinite. And this is where our normal logic starts to break down.
All right, lay it out for me.
If you define the infinite, you are, by definition, placing a limit on it. You're saying it is this, and therefore it is not that.
You're drawing a boundary line around something that is supposed to be boundless.
Exactly.
So it's like if I say the ocean is the water inside this bucket. I mean, there's ocean water in the bucket, so it's technically true. But I've lied about the ocean.
Precisely. You've confused the sample with the source. The text says, the moment language claims possession, this is what God is, it replaces reality with an object.
An object.
And this is the crucial part. An object, it says, is something that can be held, named, defended, and used.
Defended and used. Wow, that hits hard. Because we see that all the time, right?
We do. And this is where the source brings in the concept of the idol. Now, when we hear idol, we usually think of, I don't know, Indiana Jones.
Yeah, a golden statue in a temple, something you physically bow down to.
But this text is saying an idol is a conceptual object. It's an idea. So even if you keep using the word God, if you have it all defined in your mind,
A rigid list of attributes, a personality profile.
a set of rules that God has to follow, you're not worshiping the reality anymore. You're worshiping your own definition. You're worshiping a thought form you created.
So you're worshiping a tool, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And why do we use tools?
Let's get things done. To exert control.
That's it. If I have a clearly defined concept of God, I can use that concept to justify my political views. I can use it to feel superior to my neighbor who has the wrong definition.
Or just to soothe my own anxiety because I feel like I have the whole universe figured out.
It's like you think you're looking at the moon, but you're actually just staring at a drawing of the moon you made on your window.
And a drawing is manageable. I can wipe it off. I can repaint it.
You can sell it, the real moon. That's out of your control. That's wild. Untamable.
So positive theology, saying God is X, Y, and Z, it just reduces the divine into something the human ego can manage.
Correct. It domesticates the sacred.
Which brings us to the core strategy the source talks about, negative theology, or the via negativa.
The way of negation.
Right. Now, can you clarify this for me? Because when I hear negative, I think bad mood.
Cynicism.
Yeah, cynicism. But that's not what this is it?
Not at all. It's not negative in its attitude. It's negative in its process. It's all about subtraction, not addition.
Okay.
So instead of trying to pile up words to describe what God is, these ancient traditions focused entirely on saying what God is not.
And the text lists some of these, right? God is not finite, not graspable, not contained.
And this is a very important one. Not subject to desire, fear, or control.
It feels a bit like sculpting, doesn't it? You don't add clay to make a statue.
Yeah.
You chip away all the stone that isn't the statue.
That is a perfect analogy. The source actually uses this kind of spatial language. It says positive definition erects walls.
It builds a box.
It builds a box to keep the concept safe.
Yeah.
But negation, it says, removes false boundaries. It knocks the walls down.
But I can hear a listener right now. Honestly, I can hear myself saying, okay, but isn't that just a cop-out?
How do you mean?
Well, isn't it just being evasive because you don't know the answer? It feels like a politician dodging a question. So I'm not saying I did steal the money. I'm just saying I'm not a person who would.
Sure.
If you just keep saying, not this, not that, do you ever actually get anywhere? Or is it just a word game?
That is the most common critique of this whole approach. Does it just lead to a big zero?
Right.
But the source addresses that directly. It says negative theology wasn't evasive. It was protective.
Protective of what?
Protective of the sacredness of the subject itself. It says, by refusing to define God positively, these traditions prevented the ego from converting the sacred into concept, belief, or authority.
The ego. There it is again.
The ego loves concepts. It loves things it can possess. If I have a concept of God, I can claim authority based on it. I know what God wants, and hey, God wants what I want. But if I have to admit that the reality is not graspable, well, my ego has nothing to hold on to. You can't hit someone with a mystery.
So it's a strategy to enforce humility.
Yes. The text mentions that if God cannot be captured by language, then no speaker can claim ownership.
No doctrine can claim finality.
Yeah.
It's a powerful democratizer.
Yeah.
It levels the playing field completely. The Pope and the peasant are both just standing in the same fog.
Exactly. It creates this shared space of unknowing.
Okay, so this is where I want to pivot to that big question we teased at the top, the atheist connection. Because as I was reading this source, and it was talking about smashing these conceptual idols, I kept thinking about my friends who are staunch atheists.
In what way?
Well, they usually aren't rejecting some vague, mysterious sense of something more. They're almost always rejecting very specific definitions of God.
The man in the sky, the angry judge.
The cosmic vending machine, yeah. They're rejecting these very specific characters that have been presented to them.
That's true.
So if we connect the dots here, the source says that defining God creates a false idol, a man-made concept.
Right.
And atheists look at those very definitions, those idols, and they say, that is false. I reject that.
Which means, if you follow the logic of the text, they are technically performing the first essential step of negative theology.
That is absolutely mind-blowing.
It really is.
So saying there is no man in the sky isn't necessarily an act of unbelief. In the context of this source, it's an act of iconoclasm. It's smashing the idol.
It creates this fascinating bridge. The source says the danger is converting the sacred into belief. Just another opinion you hold. Right. Well, the person who has stripped away those beliefs might be closer to the holistic spirituality the text describes than the person clinging to a rigid dogma.
Because the person clinging to the dogma is clinging to a false boundary, and the atheist has removed the boundary.
Precisely. Now, we have to be careful here, obviously.
Yeah.
The source implies there is a reality behind the silence, which an atheist might disagree with. An atheist might say, I smashed the idol and found an empty room.
Right. Whereas the mystic says, I smashed the idol and found the whole universe. The conclusion is different.
But the method, the refusal to let the human ego claim it knows what the ultimate is, that is surprisingly aligned.
Wow.
The text says negation prevents the sacred from being hijacked by human concepts. Atheism is often a fierce reaction against that very hijacking.
How the atheist is the janitor coming in to clean up the mess the theologians made.
In a way, yes, it clears the floor, and that clearing is what the source argues is necessary for true spirituality.
But man, that is so hard for us modern people. We don't like empty floors. We want furniture. We want to fill the space.
We do. We are addicted to content. The text contrasts this ancient wisdom with modern spirituality.
Right.
It says modern spirituality is unsatisfied with silence. It wants descriptions, images, affirmations, and explanations.
We want the PowerPoint presentation. We want the bullet points. 5 steps to knowing God.
And why? This source is really blunt about the psychological motive here. It says, the desire for clarity through language is often a desire for control.
Oof, that one stings a little bit. A desire for control.
Think about it. The more clearly something is defined, the easier it is to manage. If I can define my anxiety, I feel like I can manage it. If I can define my partner's behavior, I can try to predict it.
I do this in relationships all the time. I need the label so I know how to act. I need the safety of the definition.
Exactly. And we do the same thing with the divine. If I can define God, I can predict God. I can make a deal. I do X, you do Y.
It turns the relationship into a contract.
It safeguards the ego. That's what it does.
Hmm.
And the source says that ancient wisdom used silence and paradox as safeguards against this very thing. They were trying to keep reality intact against the human need to possess it.
It is so counterintuitive. We live in the information age. We think knowledge is power. But this text is saying that when it comes to the really deep stuff, love, the divine existence knowledge in the sense of rigid definitions is actually a cage.
It creates a closed loop. You end up just interacting with your own ideas, never with the thing itself. You're trapped in a hall of mirrors.
So let's take this to the end game. Because if we strip away the words and the images and we admit we don't know and we smash the idols, what's left?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people fear the answer is nothing, just a void. And that is terrifying.
And that is the primal fear, that if we let go of our concepts, we just fall into an abyss. But the source offers a very different conclusion.
Okay.
It says, holistic spirituality does not use language to seize the sacred. It uses language to step out of the way.
Stepping out of the way. I like that image. It's like we're standing in front of a window, blocking the light, trying to describe the light to everyone else.
Right. And the text argues that if we just move, the light is there.
And what's there?
It delivers this promise. What remains, once words fall short, is not confusion, but contact.
Contact. That's a strong word. It sounds physical.
It implies a direct experience. Not reading a menu, but tasting the food. Not looking at a map, but actually standing on the terrain.
And our definitions are the buffer.
Yes, they keep us safe, but they also keep us separated. When the definitions go, the buffer is gone.
It really reframes the whole idea of faith then. We usually think faith is believing really hard in a specific set of sentences. I believe X, Y, and Z are true.
Right. I assent to these propositions.
But this source suggests that maybe faith is actually the courage to let go of the sentences, to trust that if you drop the definition, the reality is still there.
It's the difference between believing in the word water and actually jumping into the pool.
And to bring it back to your point about atheism, the person who refuses to say the word water because they know the word isn't the real thing, they might be the ones most ready to jump. Or at least they aren't distracted by the signpost. They know it isn't the destination.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow. We started this whole thing talking about theology, but this applies to everything. I'm thinking about how I label people in my life or myself. I am an anxious person. He is a difficult person.
Those are idols, too. They are fixed images that replace the fluid, complex reality of a human being.
And we do it for the same reason, for control. If I can label you, I don't have to deal with the messy complexity of who you actually are.
You can just file them away. Exactly. The protective silence this text talks about could probably save a lot of relationships, not just our theology.
So what does this mean for us today? We're not ancient monks. We live in a world of information overload. We're drowning in definitions. How do we apply this?
I think the takeaway is a practice of unknowing. It's okay to have words. We need them to communicate.
Right, we can't just grunt at each other.
But we need to hold them lightly. We need to remember that the map is not the territory.
And maybe to be a little less afraid of the silence.
Yes. To see silence not as an absence of information, but maybe as the only container big enough to hold the truth.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really a call to stop trying to possess the world and just start experiencing it.
Contact. That's the goal.
Well, this has certainly given me a lot to think about. We started by asking if definitions are dangerous, and I think we've seen how they can be if we confuse them for reality. And we uncovered this really surprising idea that the atheistic impulse to smash idols might actually be a deeply spiritual service.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most reverent thing you can say is nothing at all.
I love that. And to you, the listener, I want to leave you with a thought to carry with you. If this source is right, and defining God or anything sacred turns it into an idol you can use, ask yourself this. Are the people who claim to speak for God actually worshiping him? Or are they just worshiping their own ability to describe him?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.